The streets of Manila were alive with their usual chaos, jeepneys honking, vendors calling out their prices, and footsteps hurrying past in every direction. Amidst the noise, a small barefoot boy stood with a battered guitar that looked far too big for his fragile frame. His clothes were ragged, stitched in places where the fabric had long given up, and his stomach often growled louder than the crowd around him. Yet, when he strummed the strings, the world seemed to pause. His fingers, though small and calloused, played with a rhythm that spoke of practice, of nights spent under dim streetlights teaching himself songs he had only overheard. Arnel's voice rose above the clamor, raw yet hauntingly beautiful, carrying a depth far beyond his years. Some people slowed their steps for a moment, tossing a coin into the small tin can at his feet before continuing on their way. Others walked by without a glance, too absorbed in their own struggles to notice the boy pouring his soul into the music. To most, he was invisible, just another child of the streets trying to survive. But to anyone who truly listened, his voice carried something rare, something unforgettable. Though life had given him little, Arnel held on tightly to something greater than hunger or hardship. He carried a dream, fragile yet unshakable, of one day standing on a stage where the world would stop and hear him, not as a poor boy from Manila, but as a singer whose music could touch hearts everywhere. The day came when Arnel's life shifted in the most unexpected way. He was sitting on the same cracked pavement where he usually played, his battered guitar resting against his chest, singing the songs that kept his spirit alive. His voice floated through the crowded street, and though most people hurried past as always, one woman stopped. She stood still, listening intently, her eyes softening as if she had stumbled upon something rare and precious hidden in plain sight. Moved by the emotion in his voice, she pulled out her phone and began recording. Arnel, too lost in the song, hardly noticed. He sang as he always did, singing not just for coins, but for the hope that someone, somewhere, might truly hear him. When he finished, the woman approached, dropping more than just money into his can. She smiled and told him his voice was a gift, something the world needed to hear. For the first time, someone saw more than just a poor boy with a guitar. That night, she shared his video online. By morning, it had spread far beyond the streets of Manila. Millions of people around the world were captivated by the boy's pure, aching voice. What began as a simple moment of kindness became the turning point of his life. Within days, Arnel received an invitation to audition for a global talent show, a chance so unimaginable that he could hardly believe it was real. The streets were no longer his only stage. When Arnel stepped onto the grand stage, it felt like another world. The blinding spotlights made his eyes squint, and the vast auditorium stretched endlessly before him. Rows upon rows of faces stared back, cameras hovered, and the judges sat in their tall chairs, pens poised as if ready to measure his worth in an instant. His hands trembled around the neck of his battered guitar, the same one he had played on the sidewalks of Manila. For a moment, doubt pressed heavily on his chest. He was just a boy from the streets, what business did he have standing here? But then he remembered the nights he had sung to the stars, the coins dropped into his tin can, and the single kind woman who believed enough to share his voice with the world. Taking a deep breath, he strummed the first chords of Hotel California. The sound was uneven at first, but as his voice rose, the room shifted. The restless murmurs of the crowd faded into silence. Every note carried a piece of his struggle, every lyric laced with longing and truth. By the time he reached the chorus, the audience was captivated. People leaned forward, drawn in by the honesty of his voice. The judges, once skeptical, now sat wide-eyed, visibly moved. In that moment, Arnel wasn't just a poor boy with a broken guitar, he was an artist, a storyteller, and a dreamer whose song had the power to reach every heart in the room. As Arnel reached the final verse, his voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of emotion. The auditorium, once so intimidating, now felt like a cathedral echoing with his story. His small hands pressed harder against the strings of his battered guitar, his eyes closed as if he were back on the streets, singing to no one and everyone all at once. The silence in the hall was profound, even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. Then, as he strummed the last note, a moment of stillness lingered before the eruption. The audience leapt to their feet, clapping and cheering, their faces wet with tears. The judges exchanged glances, each one visibly shaken by what they had just witnessed. Finally, one of them stood, pressing the golden buzzer with trembling hands. In an instant, the stage exploded with golden confetti raining down like a shower of blessings. Arnel froze in disbelief, his eyes wide as the glittering light surrounded him. He clutched his guitar tighter, his knees threatening to give way under the tidal wave of emotion. The crowd roared louder, chanting his name, their applause echoing like thunder. For a boy who had been invisible for so long, the moment was almost too much to grasp. He looked around, overwhelmed by the realization that his dream, once too fragile to even speak aloud, was now unfolding before the entire world. The golden buzzer wasn't just a button. It was the opening of a new life. Backstage, Arnel stood trembling, golden confetti still clinging to his hair and shirt. His battered guitar hung loosely in his arms as if even it couldn't believe what had just happened. The woman who had once stopped to listen on the busy Manila street rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. She pulled him into a tight embrace, whispering, "I told you the world would hear you one day." Arnel buried his face into her shoulder, his small body shaking with sobs of relief, disbelief, and joy. Moments later, the judges appeared, still emotional from his performance. One bent down to meet his eyes and said, "Arnel, you didn't just sing a song, you gave us your soul. You reminded us why music exists, to touch hearts." Another judge added, "The world needs voices like yours. This is only the beginning." As the cameras continued to roll, the audience behind the stage erupted once more into cheers, chanting his name as though he were already a star. For the first time in his life, Arnel felt truly seen, not as a poor boy from Manila's sidewalks, but as a young artist whose gift had the power to unite people across cultures and continents. That night, his story traveled across the world, inspiring millions. Parents showed their children, strangers shared it with friends, and hearts everywhere were lifted. Arnel's journey became a symbol of hope, proving that even the smallest dream, when nurtured by kindness and courage, can rise to touch the sky.